into order. Okay, I'll repeat. Welcome June, don't skip months, June 22 of 2022, our Environmental Management Commission meeting, live and in person in Kona, with 2 people and the rest of us on Zoom, and welcome you all. So officially calling the meeting to order at 9:05. I see present John Olson, wave John, from District 4, and Rick Gaffney from District 8, Dee Fulton, District 7, and Lee McIntosh from District 6. Am I going to have to learn all new districts now? Anyway, and I'm Georgine Adams, the chair from District 9. Known excused commissioners are Elise Robinson from District 2 and Melissa Cardwell from District 8, or 5, excuse me, District 5. Hopefully John Burns will join us. He's in District 1. But I'm not seeing him yet, so that may affect some votings. Our first item of the agenda is the approval of minutes. And we had 4 sets of minutes, 3 related to a hearing that we held. And we need to have 5 votes. John Olson was recused from those executive meetings. So I think we're going to have to defer them. The only one that we wouldn't defer is if John Burns joins us for the April 27 executive meeting, because he was there. Only people who were there at the executive meeting and participants can vote on approval of the minutes. So we'll defer at least that number 1 minutes from April 27th executive meeting until John joins us, John Burns, if he can. We do have the regular meeting minutes of May 25th, 2022, that I believe the 5 of us who are present can vote on. First, I'd like to ask if there are any corrections to be made in the May 25 Volume 1 regular meeting agenda meeting minutes. Will someone make a motion to adopt those minutes from May 25?
So moved.
Rick Gaffney, a second?
Second.
Second from John Olson. All in, any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, we are adopted at least one of these guys. And like I said, the other 3 minutes we have on there, we need to defer until John Burns joins us. And at least one of them, we're going to need to defer, or 2 of them, I guess, the May 25th one, until next meeting. So when you see him pop up, shout out if I miss him, Peter. Statement from the chair, happy summer. Hope we don't have to suffer the climate change that everybody is dealing with on the mainland. Most of us have water in the background so that we can feel cool, at least to an extent. So I hope everybody is ready to participate in discussion. And warning to DEM, I'm going to give the majority of the time to you guys to catch us up on what you are doing and planning on doing. But we will go through some of the things that we weren't able to cover at our very busy meeting on May 25th. But first we'll go to any public statements on items on the agenda. I hope you all looked at our testimony file. We did get 3 different testifiers. Do we have anybody present to do oral testimony?
Co-chair, not in Kona.
One in Kona? Not in Kona. Anybody on the phone would like to make public comment? Seeing none. Again, I would recommend and hope you've already looked at public testimony that's there that relate especially to a couple of the items we did put on the agenda for discussion. So I guess we're going to move on to unfinished business. The item number 5, Roman numeral 5.1, Peter and I are trying out different outlining formats, so bear with us on that. Whether there are any reports to make by individual commissioners on your favorite issue areas that you're working on? Rick, you always are a busy guy. Have you got anything to report?
Yeah, I'll report on the the sewering of Honokaha Harbor, mainly because I want the other commissioners to understand what some of the issues that come up are. As I've said before, we managed to convince DLNR and ultimately Senator Kanuha of the need to do this, and Senator Kanuha was able to get the funds to do it. However, we've run into several, I would say, political barriers, which at this point have stopped the process completely. One of those barriers should be familiar to the other commissioners, and that is that effectively there's no way to get the sewage from Honokaha Harbor to the wastewater treatment plant 7/10 of a mile away. The county is diligently working on that, but the North Kona pump station had run into a wall with the DLNR's Historic Preservation Division not moving forward quickly, which is they're famous for. And we did manage to get the DLNR to actually ask SHPD to put it up front and make it happen. And they moved it up as a result of that. However, then the DLNR, the boating division head at DLNR decided that because the ability to connect was not imminent, that he did not want to proceed with the going to bid for the planning portion of the Honokaha project, even though the money is there. So the best laid plans can often be waylaid by bureaucrats and practical considerations. We thought it was a slam dunk when we got the money, but apparently that's not the case. So I know that Ramsey considers the North Kona pump station a priority because that will also handle the waste from Uluwini, and it's essential moving forward. However, the state doesn't necessarily see it that way, and the state bureaucrats are looking at why are we spending $10 million to sewer Honokaha if there's no place to send the sewage. So that's a rather long update and an unfortunate situation, but it's the kind of thing that we run into all the time.
So is there anything that EMC can help with?
Yeah, there probably is. There probably is. We should probably talk about writing a letter to the chair of the DLNR and express the importance of this project moving forward, and our disappointment that the department has basically stood in the way of progress.
Well, could I ask you to draft such a letter and we can put it on the agenda for next month?
Yeah, I'll do that.
And maybe miracles will happen and it'll
Yeah.
all roll into place by our July meeting. Aha,
I will do that.
thank you.
On that same topic,
John, yes?
I mean, this goes back to basically one of the major reasons that this body was created, because of the state's refusal to deal with the wastewater issue there. And there were various iterations of plans of creating a park area with a wetlands that would absorb it, that would have been closer to a state park, would have a use for it. I mean, at this point, I mean, there doesn't seem to be any fear from the state for some reason that EPA is going to come and step on them about this issue, because they're not going to allow this to go on forever. I'm certain from the environmental side, I can speak to that a little bit. We're certainly watching this, and we certainly will make the appropriate noises if it doesn't continue, being that the funds are there to do it with. So your various council people should be made aware of that. And maybe we can get some, and our state representatives, to get them going on this, because this has been going on as long as this body has existed.
Well, perhaps you could add in or contribute to Rick's letter, emphasizing some of the history of this all, but I think it would be fair to say we'd look at a letter that goes both to DNLR and council.
Yeah, and the mayor.
Oh, and the mayor, why not?
Yeah, and all of our federal rep people too, because again, I mean, at one point we had federal dollars to deal with this. I don't know that we still do, but they completely ignored it. And I'm not quite certain where, I won't speak to who the entities were that have kept it from moving forward, but they're out there. And they've been successful.
Okay, well, we'll have that definitely on the agenda for next meeting.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Sure.
Kira Wong, Deputy Corporation Counsel. I think with respect to the letter, it would be more appropriate if we draft it for the director of DEM to forward on to those various entities. Just because it's in the charter and the county code that we advise the director. And so if we work together with the director and he's okay with putting his name on that letter, we can have it sent from the department. But yes, we can agendize it for next meeting. And if Mr. Gaffney wants to bring a draft to that meeting, that would be great. I don't know if it's 4 different letters or the same letter, just to different entities. But either way, I think if we have a draft at the next meeting, we can expedite
Yeah.
and work
Okay.
with the director.
Thank you,
And
Karen.
I can help you, Commissioner Gaffney, too, if you'd like me to review prior to next meeting.
All right, I'll send you the draft then.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, moving on. Some of my items will come up later. Okay, I am so awkward trying to do this, but the next topic is priority topics for what we hope is going to be a position filled for public education information specialists at the county. And we had talked about that before. at the last meeting, and if I could share screen, which just disappeared on me. Can you see that? It actually showed up.
Yes.
Anyway, these were items that I had compiled out of the integrated solid waste management plan. And then down at the bottom were just my own comments regarding wastewater treatment. If there are some other issues that you would like to see as a high priority, and I think from the integrated solid waste management plan, it would be coming up with a long-term or at least 3-year dedicated education social marketing program for landfill diversion, specifically the pyramid, reuse, recycle, and out of which would flow some of these other items. But are there some other topics that you feel we ought to get on this list? Not seeing any raised hands. Any comments? It is in the reference file for this meeting, if you're trying to find your own copy of it. And I think in general, we were looking at from last time, the balance of there's education that we want to push out to various stakeholders, not just the public, but also our business community and tourists, the visitor community, but also the idea of being more transparent, letting the public know what DEM is up to, particularly in the wastewater area, but also around, and we'll definitely hit that topic later, people, about the transfer stations and the services that we provide, just what's going on. I think there's too much concern that there's a black box out there. So there needs to be a way for ongoing transparency communication just on what DEM is doing. I'm not seeing other comments. I'm going to take this off the agenda if we don't have any additional comments. My hope is that we would have something that we could forward to DEM. Obviously, DEM is seeing this right now at these meetings, and they certainly were party to the ISWMP. But to have something to say, okay, this is where we would go. And if they would need more information from us, more direction, please speak up, Ramsey or Senna.
Georgine, I can't see all of it and I can't scroll on it on the screen, but I assume that there is a public education process with regard, cesspools. But the public needs to be reminded, I think, that by state law that cesspools are supposed to be removed by 2050. And they need to be educated on appropriate options. And I think that just needs to keep being said over and over and over again over time.
Okay, so is there a better way you want me to state that than this one?
Well, yeah, the 2015 deadline. I think people need to be reminded that that exists. And the other thing that the public education campaign can do is remind people that, for instance, if the law changes and it has to be done when you sell a house, for instance, just so that people aren't caught unawares if the laws with regard to cesspools changed, that they're aware. And also aware of what the alternatives are. I mean, right now, the state's basically saying septic, period. And that raises a whole series of questions as well, because that's going to potentially dramatically increase the amount of waste being delivered to the wastewater treatment plants in the form of septage pump outs. So,
Well, when we get to the director's report, unless you want to pipe in now, Ramsey, on the legislative update, there were some bills passed at the state level around cesspools, but maybe not all of them. I have, frankly, there were so many, I couldn't keep track of it all. But I think there was an effort to open up the alternatives available.
Yeah, that is HB 1806. That was passed June 17, I think it was approved. But this is requires cesspools in the state to be upgraded or converted to a wastewater system approved by the Director of Health before January 1st, 2050. I just want to make sure when we say deadline of 2050, usually people have the tendency to wait till the last minute. So our intent is to do it way before the 250. So on or before 2050.
Okay. And I think
the
that's
state committee, yeah, and the state committee have been meeting bi-weekly on this issue. There's Department of Health already issued a report, I believe, on their website. It details the entire state cesspools and the challenges and priorities of areas. And people could access it, I believe, on the Department of Health website.
I think that is another area of concern, and let me figure out where to stash that, is coordinated messages that you need to both have DEM and DOH and whoever, DNLR, whoever else are doing things that impact the public around the environment. And it's not your bailiwick, it's theirs, DOH requirements. And how to make sure that coordinated messages are going out. If people are used to coming to the DEM website, for example, you need to have the links over to where DOH has information, just to make sure everybody can get the information as seamlessly as possible. Any other comments on?
Well, kind of a question. I mean, unfortunately, I've been a little tied up myself and haven't been keeping as close a track on this one as I should have. But has there been any movement in terms of the alternate treatment that could be legally used? In other words, there's a lot of different systems out there, but they've never been able to get state approval. Has there been any movement on that?
There's a lot of different innovative designs have been presented, but they have to be state approved. There is the ATU unit, which is the aerobic treatment unit. That is being utilized for properties near shoreline. That is an option. Septic tank with leach field versus septic tank with seepage pit, that also could be an option. The layer cake option has not been technically approved in the state, but CINA will be willing to work with us as we move forward on different alternatives.
Thank you.
Okay, stuck that in there. is the time ripe to put just a general review of the cesspool situation, especially as it affects DEM on July's meeting agenda? Or is there still stuff that'll be done? I want to do it when it's ripe to do.
Is that a question to me?
That's to you, yeah. Do you
Yeah.
think in July, the end of July, I think it's the 27th is our meeting. Is there
I mean, we
a
could
good
give
time to
more up.
review it?
Yeah, we could give more update, but just know these cesspool conversion, it's a state driven. Because they're the one who issued the permit for septic tanks.
Yeah,
Our goal is to make sure that we could maximize the wastewater connection to a treatment plant rather than septic tank. Because it's kind of defeat the purpose if you have a sewer collection. I'd rather put the infrastructure money into extending the sewer collection line versus putting septic tank to 100 plus
Yeah.
homes. So, you know, these the type of stuff that I don't know how we're gonna control it, because individual homes gonna end up seeking permits from the Department of Health. But maybe through the public education officer that we're gonna have, maybe we could get communities together and figure out the cost of these septic tanks to their communities and offset that cost with the infrastructure expansion of the sewer collection. So rather than every individual going on their own and try to put a septic, it's gonna be challenging, definitely. But we need to start. I know 2050 is, you know, to some people could consider down the corner. To some people say, hey, I still got 30 years to go. But I think road planning is recommended. So definitely we need to think of it. We need to outline the areas and maybe create public meetings to give the people options, maybe as a county, even though it's driven by the state, but we need to get involved.
Well, let me try to come up with a potential topic and run it by you. And if you think our July meeting is an appropriate one, maybe we can get that on the agenda.
Sure.
Okay,
I mean, if I can weigh in again on this.
sure. John Olson?
You know, particularly out where I live, there's, you know, some numbers of thousands of small lots, you know, 8,500 square foot lots sitting around there that are yet to be built on, and some kind of notification to the owners of those properties that this is coming down the pipe to them, figuratively and literally, to give them a heads up. So that, I mean, again, this is, if people are just flipping these lots, they're not going to be particularly interested in what the outcome is, but those of us who live there are very concerned with the outcome. So some way to get them into the loop where they have to deal with the issue as it unfolds.
Definitely, John, I think your area, you're right. The good thing is the state doesn't approve any more cesspools, so, and that's been on the book for a while. So if these lots being flipped and let's say if somebody want to build a house on it, Department of Health is going to require them to put a septic tank if they're not near sewer collection system. So to some extent, you know, that's kind of controlled. To some extent, it's controlled and overseen by CENA's group. But yet some of the big subdivisions that come to our attention for review and comments, we usually comment on these large subdivisions to connect to a treatment plan. Because not having large subdivision not to connect is environmentally is unacceptable unless they definitely design and construct their own treatment plan, which is, it's a mandate by Department of Health. So yes, if somebody has a lot or a parcel that, you know, in your area, if they intend to develop, I hope that they, CINA's group is overseeing that.
Okay, well, like I said, I'll work with Ramsey on coming up with an agenda item of just what kind of scope we could talk about for next meeting. And maybe we can even get some DOH input as well.
Jane, quick question for the director. What's the timeline for this public information officer coming on board?
Well, we added it in 22-23 budget. So by the time the budget get approved July, I guess it's been approved. It's July 1st. We're gonna try to advertise the position once the budget executed. So it's the recruitment process. It depends. The recruitment, we within our department, we have our human resource that sadly to say she'll be leaving our department to park and recreation, but given the recruitment process for the human resource within our department, that's a priority for us as well. So we're looking at, it depends on the recruitment, Rick. It could be, if we could find somebody that applies to the position, it could be within 3 to 6 months from the date the budget is executed. So sometime mid-year of 2023, probably. They should be out there running, doing the public meetings and what have you.
Well,
Thanks.
certainly let us know when that rec is up, and we can circulate it to people we know that we think might be good to consider the slot.
Yes, definitely.
Any other comments on these items? Again, there are going to be multiple priorities that obviously DEM is going to deal with, and time for the person to get themselves oriented and ready to do things. But if there's some ideas you want included on this, I'd like to say now's the time, because I'd like to close this out and pass it on to DEM. Okay, not seeing comments. We will move to the second item. I can share screen. Save that. And that was not the agenda, Georgie. Got too many things open. This was the proposed components of an integrated wastewater master plan. I think we had a fair amount of discussion on this last time, with the idea of not dictating what this master plan is going to look like and contain, but just talk about the kinds of elements that we think, and this was Rick Gaffney and I pulling together based on other plans we had seen, what should be in here. I understand that DEM is still finalizing their set of vision, mission, goals, statements, and certainly those would be the kinds of things we'd want to add in. I put some verbiage in here from the last discussion we had. But again, if there are chunks missing, items you think you want to have, again, this was not intended to be all the gory details, but the kind of scope, the big parts that we thought were critical, like having long-term plans and what it's going to look like and how you're going to get there for facilities. but also looking at how are you going to finance it? What approaches? We've already put in comment to try to look at the enterprise fund idea. This in red came from Rick. I don't know if you want to talk about a little bit more of this DBOOT acronym that I hadn't been familiar with, of looking at how to make it affordable
Chair?
over a long time.
I'm sorry. Peter has something to say.
Are you
Peter?
supposed- are you supposed to be sharing a screen?
I'm not.
Oh.
I am. Can you see it? No. You took it off me. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah. Am I sharing it now?
There you go.
Okay, sorry about that. Thanks for letting me know. I can see it on my screen. I don't know what your problem was. Any rate, so the red were comments that I captured from the last meeting. This was an input, I believe Rick Gaffney gave me shortly thereafter, about how to, maybe we could ease into it in terms of transferring ownership and allowing private business to get more involved in things instead of having the county be the one that has to manage and operate everything. So at any rate, again, the main issue is, are there some big components that are missing from this outline? And the idea would be pass it on to DEM and say, see if you're hitting these areas as you develop this plan that's already partly underway for different areas, as Ramsey described last time.
Yeah, I think we've talked about it, but I just want to be sure that it's highlighted at some point. If there's a huge number of septic systems installed on this island, then there also needs to be the Department of Environmental Management also needs to be able to receive the septage that's pumped out of those septic tanks and deal with it. So there needs to be recognition that there will be individual additional businesses, additional truckloads of septage brought to the wastewater treatment plants on a regular basis. So they need to be able to receive it appropriately, manage it. And then we also need to realize that this is going to substantially increase the amount of waste, liquid waste, septage that is delivered to the wastewater treatment plants that they then have to convert. So it's a huge issue, particularly now that the state's only solution to cesspools appears to be septic systems. So I just want to be sure that we're reminding the county that this is a big deal. We're talking about huge volume. On the
Okay.
plus side, it's also an opportunity to support small businesses. Because generally all of the septage haulers today are small businesses. So there'll be an opportunity for new small businesses as a result of this, but they need to be supported by the system when they deliver.
Does that capture what you're trying to say?
A little bit, but I think it needs to be more specific, that the wastewater treatment plants need to be prepared to receive that increased volume.
About that.
Yeah, that's good.
Other
I think Georgiana and Rick, probably be also a good idea to make sure that as we change the code, the county code, because some of you guys may know that septage is more concentrated than your normal wastewater because the liquid, the effluent get leached through the leach field. So the stuff that get pumped out and it comes to our septage receiver is very concentrated stuff. So our intent as we change the code, we need to start charging by concentration of these organic matters that comes to our facility because it's harder to treat. Currently, we charge a minimal amount for septage. So as the amount, like Greg said, we're going to see increase, but as the amount get increased, the charges should be looked at and based on concentration rather than gallons.
Composition is not the right word, but
You could say organic loading.
okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we certainly wouldn't stop you from putting things in this, Ramsey.
No, that's good. Great discussion. I just, I know because we taken biodiesels to our facility as well now, and that's very high concentrated effluent. For industrial commercial, we need to also stringent our code as we move forward.
Yeah, okay.
I think Dee has her hand up.
Oops, I'm only seeing 5 people at a time, so apologize. Dee,
Thank you, Georgine. And there is a button on your Zoom that allows you to change the view. But as we discuss the impacts of hauling raw sewage to the wastewater treatment plants and the increased need for demand on the plants, my concern is that we get the regulatory way paved for on-site private treatment systems, like things like Cinderella toilets or things like that, that are going to avoid the need for all the hauling and additional demand on the plants. I'm not saying Cinderella toilets are the way to go. I'm just thinking that if there were, that we should be prepared regulatory wise to pave the way for options that present themselves that could be done at the private property.
you may have seen me highlighting, and one of my peeves about this area is you're talking DOH regulations, right, Ramsey?
Yes, and I think part of that options already addressed in DOH report. I know Vi, who's funded by the Bill Gates Foundations, actually exactly had recommended what Dee just talked about, more of the, homes that's kind of living off the grid type of thing. But if you got a home within a subdivision, it could be challenging, but yeah, it's Department of Health, the one that's going to do the approval, yeah or nay, on these type of options.
And hopefully we can discuss that at next meeting, the ins and outs and the jurisdictional challenges and what DOH activities have been, which is not under our charter. So I think we always need to be looking at how it impacts DEM and whether or not we want to try to expand the scope of DEM. Any other comments? Okay, I will try to make sure I don't have too many typos in this. And again, treat it as a share with DEM to take advantage as they can. And if you find, Ramsey, that there's some things in here that you don't feel comfortable doing without council support, I think we'd be more than happy to go to council as well and tell them why we're making these recommendations. Okay, I'm going to stop share. Anybody ever hear from John Burns? Let me check my messages. No, just my husband. Okay, on to item 5.4, which is things where we should be looking at code changes. Gave you the Hawaii County codes and the DEM admin rules to wade through if you were interested. I had highlighted a couple of things that we weren't able to get to at last meeting. One was, and I don't know if you've looked into this, Ramsey, but in 2019, DEM proposed to put in a new Rule 20 on sewer monitoring. And I don't know what and why happened to that. So do you know, Ramsey?
As you all know, we going through the pretreatment program under the AOC. So our staff are looking at revising chapter 20 I don't know if they ever shared it with you, the draft, because I know it went to council, our corporation council, for review, but we need to get the green light from them to share it with you so you all can start providing comments before it get published and before it goes to county council. So yeah, our intent to capture as much as we can from service laterals to, to how we could enforce connection, to how we could enforce and implement pre-treatment prior to discharge to our collection system, change the code like what we talked about today based on organic loading rather than gallons delivered to the treatment plant. And so, yeah, I'll check with Chris and our staff to see if where he's at with Malia on that, so we could share it with you. And,
Yeah, please do, because I'm going to keep it on the agenda for next time.
yeah, Peter, underline that, please, as well.
Can I ask a specific question on that subject?
Sure, Rick.
Currently, does DEM have the legal authority to inspect laterals?
Not private laterals, no, we don't. We have the legal authority to do the laterals within the county right away.
So if the lateral is physically located in a county right of way, then you have the right to inspect it?
Within the county right away, yes.
But if the lateral is on private property, you can't inspect it.
We can, but when we do this smoke testing and we visualize and we could observe the smoke coming out of private entity, we could put that property owner on notice.
Okay. So is it the state law not provide for the ability to inspect the laterals?
Well, you inspect them when they first constructed, but once it's constructed, That's part of the code too. Usually, the ladder is owned by the property owner from the property line, from the house all the way to the main. Unfortunately, here in Hawaii, especially in the big county, Big Island, we have the lateral from the main to the county right of way owned by the county, and from the county right of way to the house owned by the property owner, but it's the same flow coming in. So, and most of, a good example, we have that sewer spill last, what was it, 2 weeks ago on Sunday down Kawakini Highway, where at the lateral was the spill before even it met at the main trunk line. Usually the county should be in charge of the flow as a volume to all constituents, not for each property owner. Because we don't have the funding to go and start fixing every lateral within private property or within the county right away, because it gets so expensive. So the idea is the cumulative flow that comes to the trunk line, technically it should be a county responsibility. From that lateral to the house or to the business, it should be the owner responsibility because that's his own flow. Let's say we saw a good example of the laundromat. You know, when all that stuff get washed, the linen get washed into the lateral and it clogs our sewer. But where it clogs it into the lateral. But that should be his responsibility. They should be able to have some type of system to trap all these debris before it goes to the sewer. But it end up costing the county money to just start going to laterals. And if the homeowner or the business owner are not responsible to take care of their own laterals. But that's some of the challenge. That's maybe something in the code we need to start revising and think about. That will be good to have your input as a commission on that as well.
Well, it was included in that proposed 2019 proposed
Right.
change, and it's why I've been wondering whatever happened to it. So if you wound it into the whole pretreatment thing, I think that that's an appropriate way to go through, for us to go through and look at.
Yeah, but the challenge is does the county DEM need to be responsible from the lateral, from the point of connection at the main to the right of way, or just the main only, and the lateral should be the owner responsibility from his house or business to the trunk, to the main?
Well, I guess the issue is, I think, yes, if it's your lateral and it is an individual property owner, you got to pay to get it fixed. The issue is, hopefully you're not waiting until after you've got a spill or a clog to identify that there's some way to periodically make sure everybody is inspecting their pipes. You know, we're going through that in our homeowner association right now, is just make sure that everything's working.
Excuse me,
And
Georgie.
Dee, I see your hand up.
Okay,
I didn't want to cut off Ramsey. So yes, Dee, you had a question.
thank you. Yeah, the question for Ramsey is, this recent spill on Kuakini, this is new information to me, that this was actually created by an issue with the privately owned portion of the lateral. Was that correct?
Well, it's a bit complicated. It's within, there was 2 sewer line main. It took us a while to kind of rebuild what was going on. You have the shopping center, you have the Kona brewery. And somehow back when they put the lateral, they demolished a manhole and they left the 8-inch sewer line uncapped. and they buried it. So eventually we have a diversion box. It was overflowing, going hydraulically the other direction. Since the 8-inch line was not uncapped when they put that personal private lateral, ended up causing the spill because hydraulically it was going the other direction. But yeah, it's a combo. It's most of the stuff that create clogs to lateral or sewer main is either tree roots from a landscape area that's within the private, or the usage of a business such as laundromat, restaurants, fat and grease. I mean, literally, we had so much fat and grease in that line, we couldn't even clean it in one day. It took us 4 days just to clear that fat and grease within that line.
So when the public incurs expenses related to failure to maintain a private lateral, I mean, is there any recourse against the owner of the lateral? Or is it the public just soaking up the costs of negligence by private individuals and businesses?
Well, I think part of it, that's why we're doing the pre-treatment now. All businesses need to have pre-treatment program, and that's what we're working on as we speak.
Ramsey,
Yes.
that's not quite answering my question. My question is, historically, has the county been soaking up the costs of issues created by private obstructions in privately held?
I don't know what's been done in the past, but I would imagine, yes, they have been, the county is being observing that cost. Just from me being here for the last year and a half, that's what's happening. That's the reason I was telling you earlier,
Yeah.
our responsibility as a county need to stay within the main trunk line, not the laterals.
So we have a really bad situation because we live on an island where there's earthquakes and tidal forces and corroding pipes and lots of problems with laterals, but there's no incentive to actually get anything done because A, nobody's checking, because you're saying we don't have the money to be conducting smoke testing. And B, if anything happens, so what? County's going to suck it up. County's going to pay for it. So that truly is looks like a serious problem.
Yeah, and I think that's why, as we looking in the code, we need to strengthen that. If we need to adjust our rate user fee to cover the cost of getting, because currently my challenge was, even with my division chief, is, are we collecting enough money in the rate user fee to pay for these sewer lateral and sewer clogging? And the answer was no. So that money is coming out of our operation fund, and it's not being collected as part of the O&M for the rate user fee. So we need to adjust that, because it doesn't make sense that we incur a cost that we're not even collecting for.
Well, one of the issues I've got down for new business is to talk about enforcement of DEM rules, and maybe we can come back to that. Because I think when you've got to have the rules that say, here's who's responsible for what, and then you've got to have an enforcement mechanism to follow up and make sure that the responsible party pays. Any other questions, Dee, or anybody else on the issue of laterals and pre-treatment?
I have
Well, on a related issue, I'm going to suggest we take a break soon.
Okay, we can do that. It's the issue you get when you talk about sewers all the time. Let's take
Madam
break.
Chair, I think Commissioner Olson, if you could
Hello.
wrap up with, he has a comment.
I
before I
just,
break.
I have a follow-up question for Ramsey more than anybody else. What authority or reach on this subject does the State Department of Health have?
You mean as far as individual sewer lateral?
Yeah. In other
Uh,
words, if you're part of the system causes a spill, I mean, is there not some consequence on the state level for doing that?
Usually the state looks at a municipality to report any sewer spill at a certain number of gallons that caused the spill.
Yeah,
So when you have an individual, the state does not monitor any individual lateral. They look at municipality waste treatment plans. A good example, you have the Pooka subdivisions where you got cesspools and septic tank that directly goes to the shoreline and then to the beach. And the State Department understand it's an issue, but you know, they could ask the property owner to get a better system, but you know, and you guys know that they've been after that with the ATU or with a better system that takes away the leach field that they have, but it's a challenge. They probably have more difficulties to enforce these than we do, in a sense, because they got 88,000 to deal with.
yeah. Well, I mean, you know, because this goes up the food chain back to the federal level.
Not on the individual, on a even the federal level, they go after municipalities and businesses. You know, if it's one house, unless you have a gas cesspool or you have a treatment plant, then you're right. Like resorts that fall under the federal, but individual homes does not go under federal. Unless they have their own treatment plant, but yeah.
Okay, are we ready for a break? Let's take a quick one, 5 minutes, if we could do it, resume at 10, 12 or so. Okay, welcome back. I am going to say that we are done with item 5.4.1 and 3. And moving on to comments that have been made previously to number 2 under there, how we charge for residential sewer fees and how we need to change the DEM rules to make it clearer and more sense, basically, for how they can be reimbursed for the handling of private sewage, residential sewage. One of the comments that was made before, I believe Melissa had commented that shouldn't we look at the volume that's being sent to the public, the wastewater treatment plant, rather than how many connections or pipes, and whether or not people are getting a water bill, volume received and having to be treated by the wastewater treatment plant is really where the cost comes. And I guess we could add where they've clogged up this county sewer pipes to pay for that. So did anybody have any specific language or approach that they'd like to discuss? Lee.
This is Commissioner McIntosh. The only thing that I saw with the capacity problem or volume is that they use your water bill to measure that, which is why they base it on a water bill. Problem with that is if you have a drip system or irrigation, that you have all this water, they're going to be charging you for sewage, and it's actually going in the ground and not into the sewer. That's one problem I see, unless they have a way of measuring it without how much water intake you bring in.
Well, I
that
should
could be-
clarify, I think, and Ramsey, if you're back on, make sure you correct me, but for residential, It's just the fact that you have a hookup and how many hookups you've got to the public sewer. For commercial, it is based on water use. So there's a split there. And in fact, at least our homeowner association, we have separate meters for irrigation water and use by the apartments. So there are ways to deal with the difference depending on how you meter it. But in a home, you've got, you know, the meter, and it does everything that you've got. And yes, if they were to be charged, they'd be charged for sprinkling water that does not wind up in the sewer. So I guess a technical question I had is, one, can you meter how much goes into a sewer from each lateral? Seems like that would be tough. Randy, can you do that?
Yeah, no, you can't. It'll be complicated and expensive to try to put a meter on a sewer, because your sewer is not your standard water where you can meter it, because it's not periodically, it's not continuous. So it's hard to meter it. That's why you do it based on number of cabinet per house. And usually it goes back, yes, you were correct about the commercial. They charge per certain number of gallons. Above that flat rate, they could charge, we charge them per gallon use after that flat rate. Our intent to pretty much follow the same thing for residential use. We should set a flat rate that covered the O&M, the actual cost to maintain that sewer line, to maintain the facilities, and then charge additional based on the number of volume, the gallons used. Because if you have a situation where, you know, you got a house that uses more than others, you're right, we only charge in that flat rate of $40+ per month. So the idea is, and yeah, we need to, with the help of you guys, we need to navigate through it as we do the code change. It makes sense to have a flat rate then, like what the city and county doing based on the water bill.
Do you know how many laterals are plugged in to the sewer, the county sewer pipes?
Yeah, we have them. We have, I don't have it on the top of my head.
No, I'm
but-
not asking for the number, but is that something that is known or knowable by the county?
Yeah, because that's. who
So,
we
so
bill
what I
them.
was thinking was that you could have, how many laterals do you have tapped into the sewer line? They're so big, and you can calculate what the average flow might be. Max, I mean, if it was going full bore the whole time, it'd be some number. And if it's an empty lot, but they got a pipe there, it's some other number, which is, you know, figure out where you go in between. I mean, that was, if I remember wading through it all, something of the basis of the flat fee that was calculated as the typical home and the typical flow and blah, blah, blah. But I was wondering if you could actually count the connections to the county sewer pipe, you charge on that basis.
Yeah, see, unfortunately, the sewer laterals is supposed to be serving one individual parcel. Here, the way it's been happening is one lateral could provide the whole subdivision, which is kind of insane to have a 4-inch lateral providing sewer service to whole subdivision or commercial
But
business.
isn't just from hydraulics, there's only so much water that can go through the pipe.
That's true. That's why each property, each lot should has its own lateral. A good example, when we have that spill in Kalakini, there's one lateral serving the entire Kona Brewery. And let's say if there's a clog or a problem, now you're gonna shut off the lateral for all the businesses within that shopping center, rather than deal with the area that caused the clogging. It's insane because it's just literally they have in one lateral that support the entire shopping center, which is crazy. It should be a different lateral for each business. That way, at least we don't get in the middle legally of dispute between business owner. Well, I didn't cause the clogging, or was the other business going to say, well, I didn't cause it either. So who's going to fix it? That's the challenges. I don't know what would it take to change it, but definitely we need to start looking at doing things differently. This is not your standard practice where you have so many businesses on 1 4-inch lateral. This is not standard. But unfortunately, we
I
have it
started
all over
with
the island.
the issue of residential. Commercial is a whole nother bucket of worms. But Dee, you had some comments to make. I saw you squirming at least.
Thank you, Georgine. Before we move away from the subject of laterals, I wanted to ask our counsel, Ms. Wong, if she would investigate state law regarding inspection of laterals, particularly in regard to public trust doctrine. Because I've spoken with other people who are of the impression that under public trust doctrine, there is no county law needed to empower the county to inspect the laterals.
Can you follow up with an email to me outlining what you need from me, and then that way I can have my secretary open a file so I can start reviewing this.
Okay,
I don't know if Ramsey's council has looked into that, Ramsey.
I think it's the challenge is right of entry, even because we working with Malia currently on Pahala Na'alehu as well, is to what extent the government could get into private property. But Pahala Na'alehu, because technically we have it in their deeds, because when we got it from Sea Brewers, we took over the system, but the idea is still, can a county get into private property without the right of entry? Because I cannot, like Dee, I cannot just come to your house and say, I'm gonna walk to your backyard and say, well, I'm gonna inspect your lateral. You're gonna kick me out, or you're gonna call the police. So a lot of people, it's the right of entry is the challenge. As a government, we cannot just wander around into people's properties.
I'm sorry, Ramsey. I guess I was picturing the camera inspection, not like you'd have to physically dig a pipe to actually inspect it, right?
Well, the camera, that's a different challenge because you have to go through their clean out to run the camera through their clean out. Sometimes we do that from our side of the clean out, but we could go to a certain extent and we do that from an inspection point of view. I mean, through camera, yeah, I mean, that's totally different. We do it through our clean out currently. That's being done. But the idea to go to, if they have breakage in the lateral, that's the whole concern about water, rainwater, I coming through the lateral to our system. You cannot see that unless you do inspection on the laterals. So when you say
you could run a camera through the clean out without actually stepping foot onto the private property?
Currently, our devices allows us to beak into the lateral that come into our main. Because you could direct the camera's head to look into the lateral, but we cannot shoot it all the way to the lateral, because let's say that lateral is 100 feet to the property. You have to have a start point and an end point.
Okay,
So when you bring your plumber in, the plumber is gonna open your cleanout and they're gonna run their 2-inch camera into your cleanout all the way to the main. But that's gonna happen on the property, not from the street.
okay, thank you.
If I may,
John Olson, yes.
isn't there something under the Federal Clean Water Act that covers that?
Covers what? That's why. I
Your
guess
ability to look to see if in fact they are or are not polluting.
when it comes to private laterals, it's still a different game. And I think, like I said, we, as a government, we cannot just wander around into people's properties. It's the homeowner responsibility.
I'm certain that on the county side, that's true, but the federal government has a much longer reach.
I don't think they do either, John, because it's, you encroaching into people's privacy. It doesn't matter if you federal or state or county. Federal government, federal agents cannot just wander into your property. They have to have a court order to.
Okay. I'm not arguing that. Everybody froze.
My internet.
Okay, I don't know what that hiccup was. The issue, there are DOH regulations, there's Hawaii County regulations, there are state regulation codes, if you will, and rules, as well as DEM, as well as the whole federal overlay. And everybody uses different terminology, and holy moly, it would be a real job to try to write this. And I am more than curious on how you're proceeding with the pretreatment regs and how we could clarify who's got to do what when. But it's not a simple thing. And so a lot of surrogate work, I think, has been done traditionally of, we'll make some assumptions and come up with this flat fee in terms of the residential, just because you can't manage all the variations that are going on. You aren't going to have the county going around and finding out how many toilets everybody's got and how many people they've got in a real-time basis. I mean, it's just not going to happen. And technically, as Ramsey was saying, it's not so easy to even measure the volume of sewage going into the county pipes. So you're coming up with some sort of substitute that's at least somewhat straightforward to administer as a regulatory agency. And what I think we were hearing when we had our appeal hearing was the language is just kind of confusing, garbled. Are there some things that we could make it more clear? And I was finding there's talked about lots and units and dwellings and buildings, and it's sliced and diced differently depending on which part of which regulation you're looking at. So the whole the issue was more, okay, does anybody have a straightforward fix for what are you responsible for as a resident, and how much should you have to pay, and how can the DEM administer it to cover their costs? We're paying their costs right now because the county's sucking up more charges than they ought to be. So that was the topic, not a simple one to fix, but if people have ideas, go for it. And Lee.
I guess it's an idea. I don't know how it would fall under, but in regards to the unoccupied unit, to just clear up any confusion in regards to that, they could change it to, the county could charge up to however many units that the TNK is allowed to have. So if the TNK is allowed to have 2 units, then they would be allowed to charge up to 2 units, the flat fee for residential. Rather than having to try and designate, is this building unoccupied or whatnot? And then that would help clear some confusion, I think, in that regards, basing on how many houses property is allowed to have, and then that would clear up. I think it would make it clearer than the way they have it right now. Did you understand what I was trying to say?
Is there such a thing, a maximum number of
Yes, there is.
buildings?
It's
There
like,
is.
it's like if you say you have ag, let's see, you said your property is ag 5, but it's 20 acres, then that means you can subdivide it into 5-acre lots. So you can have potentially up to 4 homes on that TMK. So that's kind of like what I was referring to.
Okay, and those
Yeah.
homes could have however many toilets.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It could be a mansion,
basing
it could be a shack.
Right, you're just basing it on units. So if they have 2 homes, they're allowed to have 2 homes and they have 2 connections. If they only have 1 home and they're only allowed 1 home, then it doesn't matter how many outbuildings they have, they're only charged 1 connection.
And I was coming at it from the other direction of looking up the sewer pipe going, how many connections, pipes, laterals are connected to this property and how big are they? And just calculate a range, an average, a max, like you were saying about the number of units that could be on there. And I don't know, again, there's the issue of fairness. I've got farmland, ag land, and I've got 1 building and I'm being charged for 5. Is that fair?
I meant actual buildings, not you're just charging them flat for 5. So
Yeah,
like if you,
Lee, to your point, that's literally what we do now during our inspection. A good example with the situation that we just went through, that building was converted from a water shack to a building, and the building department issued a permit. That's why we did the inspection, and the inspector determined the plumbing constitute standalone building. So you're right, if you have 1 parcel where you end up pulling permits to put another structure, will be pretty much defined by the building code, what it is. And that's when the inspector goes in there and then inspect it. That's how they define it to be chargeable units. So the concept usually in most of the entities, they use what we call ESFD, which is equivalent single family dwelling charges. And they assume it based on 2.8 capita per house, which is about 280 gallon per day. So if you charge each house 1 ESFD, that charges become your fixed amount. And if you have like a Ohana house or additional building that you went and got a permit for, then that become another 1 ESFD. So that particular parcel could be charged 2 ESFDs versus 1 individual ESFD. Because it's not based on the number of fixtures, because we don't do it. There's commercial, usually you calculate the flow based on number of fixtures. toilets or number of occupancy, especially if you have a restaurant or hairdresser or car wash where they end up using a lot of water into their system. And there's different way of doing it, but we need to revise the code to either set it up based on ESFD's number of gallon estimated for each entity, or based on commercial industrial. It could be based on occupancy, flat rate, plus what have you, that constitute that business. It's a challenge. It's not an easy thing. We're never going to be fair, because every situation, especially here, is different. There's a lot of unpermitted structures within one parcel, and it's hard for us to have staff to go around and inspect and visualize what's on the property. The only way for us to do it during the building department issuance of a permit, that's how we get notified to go there and inspect the property, because there's a permit that was issued.
And that may be some of the clarification that we could recommend, that, what is your trigger for establishing the flat fee? And if it happens to be a building permit of a certain kind, then that's your trigger, and that's it. And we put that in the regulations, and not go through these convoluted definitions that people can argue about forever. Rick.
Yeah, I don't want to beat this subject to death, but I want to remind everyone that there are a lot of houses that are converted after the fact to support multiple residences. I know of one in my neighborhood, for instance, that was built in the 80s, and it's been converted, and it now has 5 apartments in it. So it has 5 bathrooms and 5 kitchenettes for 5 different individual renters in a single family home. So their volume is clearly a lot larger than the other single family homes around it. And by the way, they're using a cesspool, so effectively they have a gang cesspool. And this is becoming a huge problem on Oahu, with the cost of housing going so high that multiple families are moving into houses that were built as single family homes. So the original building permit and the original construction doesn't have anything to do with the amount of volume that's coming out of those houses after the fact. But there's been stories in the paper on Oahu about these monster homes that are being built with 10 bedrooms and 10 bathrooms. And I don't know how the city and county of Honolulu is handling that, but clearly it's an issue, because the same kinds of housing costs are affecting our community, and that's resulting in more people living in homes that were originally built for a small family.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, Rick. I think this is where planning department and building department need to strengthen their code. Lee's correct. When you have a zoning within 10,000 square foot lot, you should be able to build one house and maybe, and that's it. So if you end up getting a permit to build another 2 Ohana houses on a 10,000 square foot lot, that become a zone violation, I would imagine. So, and a lot of people end up building things probably without a permit. And that's a challenge to the building department of how to monitor that as well. But as far as our department is, in your scenario, if we inspect that and you got 5 different units, we charge them 5 different connections. Because you're right. I mean, it's not one house. Now you have 5 different rentals. And from a wastewater, we have 5 different structures contributing to our treatment.
And that again is triggered by a permit application. You'd find
They
out.
build a
Maybe.
permit. Yeah, maybe.
If
Maybe
they're
not.
complying with those regulations. it was why I was trying to think of, can you come from the other direction, from the wastewater treatment plant, and say, how much stuff could come from this pipe that's on this TMK? And that's the basis for your charge. And if somebody wants a variance from you because they only have one itty bitty little toilet and one itty bitty bedroom, then they could ask for reduction in the fee. I don't know. We aren't going to solve it together here at this time, but I want to raise it. It's easy to say, well, just fix the code. Well, it is incredibly difficult to just fix the code because it's not just one place you got to fix it. You got to fix it all these other places, and you've got to figure out a way that you can actually administer the thing, because you can get the information without incredible cost. And so I would like to close this discussion on this item and ask if you work on it again. We'll put it on next agenda. If you've got any brilliant insights, certainly.
Whoops. We're still alive.
I think it's our internet. But you're plugged in, right? You're not using Wi-Fi.
Froze.
Okay. Are there changes to the code for DEM, or perhaps for others, around the issue of littering? And I couldn't get it open in time. Did you add that piece from the police department, Peter, to the record?
No, I don't think so.
He said
No,
no.
you didn't get it in there. Okay. Anyway, the issue right now is that DEM has requirements to secure the loads that are coming to the transfer stations and to the landfill. Except people don't. And stuff flies out of the back of their truck and makes a mess, littering. It is been said in more than one place that I saw that unsecured load issue is the primary rationale for why there's litter everywhere. There are also the scuzz buckets who throw their beer bottles out the window as they're driving along the road, but they aren't the majority of the volume. So we have it in the code, in the DEM regulations, and in the police regulations, the Hawaii code. So littering is regulated, but it needs to be done. Had it on the list for public education and communication. The police department, the county police department just put out something on their website, and Peter send the link out to people. Oh, did you? Yes, there it is in the chat. If you go and look at that, they're reminding people that it's against the law to litter and you need to secure your loads. And that only goes so far, but that was good. And so I wanted people to be aware of that. I think that was really useful testimony. Unfortunately, the individual wasn't able to come to the meeting today, but if there are some things that you think we need to do to change the issue, add to the regulations, short of our new business item, which will be how DEM enforces things. Peter, we're getting hiccups in the recording, Peter. Is that you or connection?
Yeah, it might be me.
I think it's on our side.
Okay, well, I'll try to quit talking when I hear the lady say you're no longer recording. So anyway, the question and maybe something to defer is littering changes. And I see Rick Gaffney has his hand up.
Yeah, I wonder if we can ask the police department to detail for us how many people have been cited for an uncovered load in the last year, 2 years, 5 years, to get some idea of whether or not they're actually doing any enforcement whatsoever.
I'm trying to remember if there was any data in the testimony. You could certainly pass that question along. They do not give it a priority. And they aren't there to catch people. I mean, you got to be behind the truck to stop them and give them a ticket.
Well, the reason I say that is that there are a number of unenforced laws on this island. One of the classic ones is truck tires that extend outside of the fenders. And if you ask the police department, you'll find that they're very, very, very rarely cite that, even though it's very obvious, as are uncovered loads. And there are regular speed traps on the Queen Ka'ahumanu Highway that are on the way to the Kealakahe transfer station. So it would be logical to further ask the police department, all right, when your guys are out there doing the speed trap, if they see an uncovered load, will they cite it? Because my observation would be that a lot of the quote unquote littering, which is resulting from waste blowing out of trucks, could be prevented if there were regular citations and the community was aware that if you have an uncovered load, you might get a ticket. Because I think right now, most people think that they're never going to get a ticket, so why bother?
I can see about asking that question. There was also some additional communication that the testifier had shared with us by the police department. But my recollection is that they admitted it was not a high priority for them. But I would like to also bring this back up when we get to new business on how DEM enforces their requirements, because as you say, it's the police right now that have to enforce it. Just like with the abandoned vehicles, the police are the ones that give this out, even though DEM regulations are the ones that specify the requirements. So if you'll let me pause and come back to that question. Anybody else have a burning issue on littering? Okay, I'm gonna come back to the issue, but I will try to see what additional information we can get on actual citations that the police have put out.
I could weigh in on this in
Oh,
Puna.
John,
Yeah,
go ahead.
down where I am, we have kind of asked the police to weigh in a little more on this because it's become serious. Given the how do I put this politely? The location of the transfer stations relative to the population, the density of the population, we have a problem. Highway 130 is being severely impacted by trash that gets loose. And so is Pahoa. So we're going to, coming down, you know, as this moves on, looking forward to getting additional facilities put within these large subdivisions that we have that are basically totally unserved.
So noted. We also have the Department of Transportation who've got their people running around. Read the testimony is what I would recommend. The last item under unfinished business was Bill 167 that was passed last week by the council that restricts the sale of non-mineral sunscreens. And it is not specifically a DEM based requirement, since it's sunscreen used on people's bodies, which isn't the purview of DEM. However, the council did put DEM as the ones responsible for enforcing the requirement. I admit that I was not in favor of this particular bill for several reasons. But one of the reasons was putting the requirement for enforcement on DEM with, I believe, the understanding that wink, wink, they won't have to do anything. The retailers, especially the big retailers, will comply with the law anyway. And it'll be another one of those on the books but not enforced regulations. That bothers me. And so I think it's appropriate for us to ask the question, which I wanted to stick more under new business of what can DEM do in the enforcement arena? An example of littering, I just give some examples. In the case of littering, when an unsecured truck goes to a transfer station and stuff's kind of fluffing out of the back of the truck, DEM says they can do nothing. The people who are staffing the transfer stations are not able to give citations. It has to be a police citation. The idea in the case of Bill 167 that DEM is going to go around to retailers and collect illegal sunscreens, they don't have the staff, they don't have the money. We're not given any money to enforce this thing. So just what is the status of DEM enforcement, and is it real? And is it fair to put requirements on the department? So I see two hands, well, one hand. Dee?
Yeah, I just want to interject that there were so many testifiers in favor of Bill 167 that the county council had to reduce the time allowed for testimony from 3 minutes to 2 minutes. So as far as costs, part of the costs that the DEM doesn't have to worry about is actually going around and inspecting in the stores, because you're going to have a force of citizenry that are educated and impassioned about this topic. They do not want these toxic substances in our ocean, and they're aware of the toxic consequences to our bodies of using petrochemical sunscreens. So that part of the DEM job is going to be easy, because you're going to have a force of non-deputized citizens that are going to be promptly calling Mr. Mansour's office to report when they see forbidden sunscreens on the shelves of stores.
And my point is having to deal with those calls and trucking out to the retailers and collecting the illegal material and disposing of it as being a function of DEM. But the law passed. The mayor still has the opportunity to do something if he chooses. But the concern that I'm bringing up is the capability of DEM to enforce this requirement. Rick, you had comment.
Yeah, I agree with what Dee said, that there's an impassioned, educated group of people who supported this process, and now it's law. And there is actually a fairly simple way that this can be dealt with, and I've seen this done on a national basis. If there is a website that DEM maintains where people can report and send photos from their phone of illegal products on the shelves at a specific location, DEM can have a pre-written letter that goes out to those places, those stores, saying it was reported to us on X date, and with photographs showing that you are currently carrying these illegal products in your store. Please remove them immediately. And that particular campaign on another subject worked very well nationally. It basically took Moreland off the menu nationwide. And secondly, most of the stores are not going to have product to throw away because they'll return it to the manufacturers. That's what the stores do. The wholesalers take it back and send it back to the manufacturers for credit. So I think there's a very simple solution to supporting this bill. And I think it's important that we support its premise as opposed to trying to find a workaround to stand in the way of supporting its premise.
Are there other comments? Lee?
I have one. It still comes down to someone has to monitor that website and send out the letter. So DM still doesn't have the personnel to do that. So that's just more money they're going to be asking for the next budget. And we already have transfer stations that need attendance. They're only working part of the week. And I think that should have been, well, anyways, I don't think it was a good idea.
Well, not to beat a dead horse, but just the national campaign that I described earlier was handled by a nonprofit. So any burden on DEM could be picked up by a nonprofit that wants to see this supported. And I believe there's a number of large nonprofits on the island and statewide who might pick that up. So there are ways that this can be supported. And I think it's also important to know that it is a DEM function in the sense that when endocrine disruptors are dumped into the waste stream and then end up in the ocean, that's a serious issue for all of us on this island. And that's effectively what's happening with these oxybenzone containing chemicals which pass through the human body in 15 minutes and end up in the waste stream. So it is a waste issue.
Does DEM wish to comment?
I guess I can. I'm looking forward to work with council member Inaba and Villegas on trying to do the admin rule, but you're right. We submitted a proposed cost because Senna could talk more about it because she was working with Maui County on how they were setting up their their section, and we did project about just for the public education itself. So I look forward to the meeting so we could narrow down how we could do it efficiently. But yeah, it's gonna take some resource. And this, we gotta monitor it since a cost was submitted. Finance requested I believe a cost from our department. We submitted, our business manager submitted a cost projection to our finance department, but that was, the bill was passed after the budget was approved, second reading budget was approved. So we're gonna monitor it. We're gonna work with council members and see how we best could accomplish that. But yeah, people may get frustrated if they give us a call and we cannot respond, but I like what Rick has suggested, maybe spit out a letter that it's already pre-written. That's a good idea as well. But yeah, we'll ride this as it comes. Senna, I don't know if you need to add anymore.
Yeah, I'll just say that, like, personally, I'm 100% in support of this bill. However, when it comes to us enforcing it, us being, and I speak for my recycling section, I don't speak for entire DEM. It's just a matter of time. I mean, those are great ideas. The reporting, processing phone calls and processing that does take time. But those are all great ideas. Having something on the website, that could be a good idea too, but processing it. So we'll just have to wait and see what comes down the pike. But yeah, personally, I'm in support of this. Just I wish that they give us a staff, even a year-long staff person, because once it's in effect and the education's been out there, then it'll become, but this initial time is, this initial year or so is going to be labor intensive. So that's all.
Thank you, Senna.
My 2 cents.
John?
It would seem to me that there's going to be enough blowback about this that retailers are going to find it difficult to move the product. So I'm optimistic about it.
And again, I was looking more at our oversight advisory to DEM and how much time and effort they put into this. I think it will be, for the most part, self-implementing, but it will be an increased burden on DEM, and find the easiest way you can to deal with it. So unless somebody else has a compelling comment on that, I'd like to move to the new business item 6 on the enforcement of DEM rules. We've got 2 illustrations. We've talked before about the abandoned vehicle issue. You're not supposed to put stuff down the drain that's going to kill the bugs in our waste treatment plants or clog up the pipes, but people do anyway. How do you enforce it? Can DEM, for example, at a transfer station, or do they have the authority to hand out citations for unsecured loads being brought into a transfer station? Can they? Council, do you know? Is it something, has Malia commented to you, Ramsey, about the ability to do that?
We cannot enforce it. We usually, if somebody comes in with an unsecured load, we take that information, we note it with our staff. If he does it second time around, I think we only could fine him $25 or something. But we cannot enforce it because we don't have an enforcement section or code enforcement within our department. It has to go to the police department for enforcement. That's my understanding. So there was a talk about creating a code enforcement section for the county as a whole, because the entire county, from illegal dumping to illegal buildings to, maybe that's something the county need to look at creating. Where are they going to put it? I don't know, but it seemed like most of counties and cities, they do have a code enforcement division that it goes out there and supported by the police department or the sheriff in issuing citation. But they will be well equipped to deal with conflicts, and our staff are not. So that's what I have.
Okay. Comments from anybody else? Again, it's kind of a personal bug of mine of just writing regulations that you can't enforce, won't enforce. And are there ways that are reasonable that could be enforced? I mean, Rick, you gave the example of automating it through public reporting. Just one way. The public can also report, take out their phone, take a picture and get a ticket for using their phone while they're driving along the road, watching stuff flying out of somebody's truck. But are there, it sounds like it's both a staffing issue for DEM, and my question for council is, are you legally prohibited, or is it a union requirement that you can't issue an actual citation and say, you violated and you owe this much money because you violated one of our rules?
There's definitely some union implications in there because the police officers customarily and historically provide that service to the county. It's not impossible, but there's that aspect that you have to explore first, meaning the county would have to consult with the union to establish those parameters, because every time the county implements things where an employee's terms, conditions, wages of employment are affected, the unions have to be consulted. And here where you have overlap of what appears to be DEM having the authority to enforce, but no staff or an enforcement division to do the work, and the police on the other side having that authority to do it, but they aren't able to for many reasons. You have that gap in between. And so, like I said, while it's not impossible, there's a process that has to happen. I know that DPW has like a parking enforcement officer position, that the HPD and DPW established a program so that it gave parking enforcement officers the authority to issue citations. I don't know if that's something that DEM might be exploring. But the thought I had was DEM also has under the county code, the polystyrene section that they are also supposed to be enforcing. So I guess my question was, how is that piece enforced? Because I kind of see a parallel between
Yeah, good question.
issuing NOVs or violations. And if that's not something that they're doing currently because of staffing, then I guess that's just the issue. But I don't know if Ramsey or someone can speak to the polystyrene, how that process is being worked out.
Yeah, the challenge is we do issue notice of violation, but the problem is, it's still get ignored. So what do you do with, you go to court? We have a few issues that I know I spoke to Betsy about it, and that's where the idea of creating an enforcement section may work, but we need also to be able to navigate through, you send a notice of violation or a letter and it get ignored, then it has to go through the court system. And Corporation Counsel now has to lead it through the court to make sure it gets enforced. And I think that's what we've seen as the challenge of transitioning that to become a legal issue that need to go through either civil court or some type of court system to determine the judgment.
Senna, can you address specifically how you're dealing with the polystyrene ban?
To my knowledge, there hasn't been any reports of it. I mean, this is limited to, it's not, our ban is different from Maui's, right? You can still go buy styrofoam. So what did happen, and it was through the public, through people, like I would get emails from people like, I just went to so-and-so and they're still using styrofoam. This is when the ban first passed. We would go out and do a site visit we bring the rules and let them know. And then it was usually like, oh, we didn't know about it, you know, we're using these up. And so, but to my knowledge, we haven't had any reports for having to do with businesses using it for a long time, so. But it would be the same thing, a letter would go out. But to my knowledge, it never got to the point of violation, because it first would be we do a site visit and that was usually enough, you know, they'd be like, oh, okay. And then it would go to a letter going out to saying, please don't do this again. If you do, then you will be fined whatever nominal amount of money, so. But to my knowledge, and I may be wrong, but to my knowledge, we haven't had any violations, notice NOV sent out for a super long time with respect to the polystyrene.
Okay. Well, presumably that was part of the basis for your cost for enforcing 167, the sunscreen ban. I mean, there'll be a blip and then it'll probably die off. John,
Well, I mean, from speaking for Puna, I mean, our problem is level of service. Basically, we have 2 transfer stations. And they are not serviced by any county road. We have only Highway 130. And that's it. So we have, well, of course, we're now according to the census, we're now the most densely populated district on the island. So our level of service is rapidly declining because I don't know whether you've been out that way or not, but there is a building boom like nothing I've ever seen going on in Puna right now. I'm a child of the 60s. I've seen building booms. And this matches anything I've ever seen. They are throwing them up left and right, and we're going to have to, on all levels of service from the county, are going to have to pick up the game. And we're going to have to be looking at how we're going to deal with this.
no, I appreciate it. Lee, did you have a comment? Fine if not. Okay.
I was just
oh, sure, go.
I was thinking I wasn't going to comment, but majority of the transfer stations are serviced by the highway. I think there's at least only I know of the Hilo transfer station has the county road by it, but all the others I've seen, you have to access it to the highway, and that's probably one of the reasons why trash litter blows out, because people are driving 50, 60 miles an hour and trash is going whoo. I'm lucky because I only have to travel about 100 feet on the highway from my road, so it's not that big of a deal.
I guess just to close this out, if keep thinking about what changes we might want to recommend. The idea of a county code enforcement is perhaps intriguing. Again, I think in the spirit of recognize that anytime a regulation comes out, there are costs, administrative costs that DEM also needs to factor in when they're doing things. And when we're recommending or supporting different regulations, we need to be aware of the practical administrative costs for the agency. Regardless of the merit of the intent by the legislators, you still have to deal with the reality, as we well know about our wonderful wastewater treatment plants that need maintenance and its own kind of enforcement issues. So I'd like to close out the topic under new business and move to DEM's informational report.
And I regret that I cannot remain in the meeting. Thank you all. Thank you, Georgine, Ramsey, but I need to bid you adieu.
Well, we record the meeting and you can sit through the wonderful recording the rest of the meeting.
And I will not be present for the July meeting because I'll be traveling on the mainland.
Okay.
Okay, thank
So,
you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fulton.
Thank you. Dee.
Chair Adams, so we lose quorum. We can continue the
We're
meeting.
down to 4.
Yeah, we can continue the
Right.
meeting. We just can't take any actions, but I don't think there's any.
We're
vote-
not taking actions. We're just
Yeah.
taking information, trying to find out, well, what's the latest thing? What's with this high five stuff? So yeah, I think it's informational. We will not take or voice any motions other than to adjourn. And so just information that will encourage those who are not here to listen to the recording. So take it away, Ramsey and or whomever. First item is legislation and whether there's some things that we should be aware of or that you, again, would like advice from the EMC as you think about implementation.
Yes, thank you, Georgianne. As you guys know, as far as the legislation that we talked about it earlier, HB 1806, that's the only one that moved forward. Some other stuff, I'll have Senna give some update on the stuff that she's been paying attention to as far as diversion, composting, recycling, what have you. So Senna, if you want to give us
The ledger,
update on where you're at on these stuff.
we're doing the ledger update right now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just waiting for the governor to sign the bills that I want signed. So currently, the ones that are sitting on his desk is a couple relate to composting, some DAV, abandoned vehicles, and the e-waste bill, which would be super amazing since that's causing a lot of grief. If this bill gets signed in, then what bill is it? It is HB 1640. Manufacturers would have to do this is in a nutshell, and I can't speak to it more than that. That's Chris's bailiwick, is that manufacturers would have to provide a monthly collection. So, and if that gets put in place, if it's signed, then by October, I believe they have to provide a plan with DOH, and they're supposed to start collections in January. And that would really create a big benefit to us. So still that's not signed. Another one has to do with the composting that I hope passes, that he signs in. It is 1992, permits composting and co-composting operations on ag land under certain conditions. So what else is there that's us? Packaging, that one's beneficial. HB 1644 bans the manufacture, sale, and distribution for sale or use of wraps, liners, blah, 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 the PFAS. So that's the ones that I'm waiting for. One that did pass has to do with the high five, but that's more the finance over auditing with DOH. So that's where I'm waiting for. If anyone wants to send good thoughts to signing 1640, that would be awesome. So hopefully it passes.
So there's still, as I understand it, if 1640 gets passed or signed by the governor, DOH has a lot of regulation writing to do first, and then it would come over to you.
Yeah, I don't know how much, yeah, I'm assuming so, but they have to approve the plan of the manufacturers to come in and, whatever the plan that they come up with, which I'm sure that they are working on now in the event that he signs it, so that manufacturers provide monthly collections for their customers, to whom their products are going. So, because the plan, my understanding is that the plan would have to be approved by sometime in October by DOH in order for the program to begin January of next year.
Again, I'm looking at whether or not there are administrative staff demands on you, your group to deal with it. um,
Not
that
really,
you-
right? Yeah, right now
from-
we're kind of in a. So because of COVID, I think, I'm sure that's why, I'll just say that for everything. Our money's got cut, a few years back, and we're seeing the third of it this year of our e-waste budget being a lot smaller than it used to be. So if you remember back in January, February, April's when we put out the press release, but we actually ran out of money, I believe in January for the e-waste. We ran out of state funds because we used to get maybe 170,000 a year. And now we're getting, I think this year we get 99,000 or 89,000 or something. Anyway, so right now we're trying to come up with a plan. We just did an RFI to create a new program so it doesn't, so we don't start a program and then we just have to suspend it through lack of funds. But we're trying to develop it with the knowledge that we may be supported by the manufacturers themselves taking back their e-waste. So we're having to do administrative work on this regardless of this bill being signed or not. Just our normal administrative contracts.
Well,
So
moving into this second item, which is budget issues. It sounded like, Ramsey, you guys got the money you asked for, correct?
Yes, we asked for it, we got it. Some of the position, unfortunately, we got enough position to get us going, but we may be going mid-year. As for the position that probably we did not secure this year, some of the two position is, having information analysts, system analysts to assist us with the asset management and the SCADA system that we're going to be installing for helo treatment plan, and trying to do a deferred maintenance rather than doing deferred maintenance, proactive maintenance, so that software could eliminate the deferred maintenance issues that the entire department used to deal with, so we don't fall in the same predicament.
So you're saying you did not get funding for that?
That I did not get funding for it, but I worked with our MD and finance director and trying to see if we could reallocate some of the other positions. So this is, it's been negotiated with them, and we'll see, maybe mid-year, we may go and ask for these two positions. But we'll see if we cannot reallocate any of the current positions we have. That's something we need to go back and ask for.
Senna, I don't know if it's fair to ask you, but again, if commissioners had a chance to look at the testimony submitted by Jennifer Navarro, she and many others are working on a survey questionnaire that you're all individually welcome to participate in order to inform and influence how EPA gives away a lot of money that could come to the county to help with recycling and et cetera. So if you wanted to comment on money issues, money coming that you are hoping for, cross fingers.
Yeah. So, well, we're in this, it's really amazing to be literally working with the EPA. They've had several webinars there's the infrastructure money, and then there's the outreach and education money. The infrastructure money just goes to governments, but of course we can work with nonprofits, et cetera, and contractors. And but those grants are only open to governments. It's 75 million over, I believe, 5 years. They've been asking, like, these webinars or like Zoom meetings, they do their presentation and then they ask questions and then they ask for our feedback, because it's called a recycling infrastructure. And the first meeting that was attended as it so happened, and we didn't plan it, there was representatives in all the different diversion groups, nonprofits, governments from all the islands. And it was like, Hawaii is in the house. It's like, can we use this money for reuse and waste reduction, not just recycling, because being so far from market. And so anyway, they put out, and that's what the survey is about. We to back up a little bit, through the different HUIs of diversion, we've been meeting like every week or so. It's like people from Mr. K's, Zero Waste Hawaii Island, Volcano Precious Plastics, just different groups on the island. We've been meeting every week or so, moving toward, and Zero Waste has definitely been leading it just because they have the time more than I do. And having the collaboration is great. To reach out, do a really quick survey to any diversion stakeholders, which is kind of everyone, but people that, you know, take the time and interest in and reply to this, in order to respond to the RFI, because the EPA decided, instead of, you know, I mean, they gathered the information through the webinars, the Zoom meetings, but also just to do an RFI. They're asking basic questions and they're asking everyone's opinions on coming back. So we decided to do it in a survey method to engage stakeholders. And then that's what the survey that just got, we started sending it out yesterday. We got approved by everyone that needs it to approve it here. And then it's gone out. And then we'll get it back, and then we'll fill out and do the RFI. I think it's due on like July 21st or 23rd or something. So yeah, it's a lot of money. And what's really nice too is that the EPA is saying, whatever the grant, the RFP comes out and looks like now, it can very easily change for next year. Like they'll take into consideration lessons learned from this year and the information that keeps zipping in. One of the largest things that they are very fully aware of just through the webinars, Zoom meetings, is everyone's like, we're short staffed, and filling out grant applications is a, you know, so it's like this wicked catch-22 that happens. So anyway, it's exciting to be working with all the groups, and we look forward to getting responses from whoever takes the time. It's a pretty short and sweet survey, so thanks.
Okay. So speaking of budgets and money that goes different directions, you want to summarize what this situation is on High Five?
Sure. So all of the CRCs, the Certified Redemption Centers, they are all contracted. We don't run any of them. We put out contracts. Again, when you pay for your beverage, then you pay a little bit of money for the container, and you pay a tiny bit of money for the administration of the program. That all goes to DOH, and then DOH gives us money every year. It's through grants, grant reporting, blah, blah, blah. So every year, we put out for bid, or we put out for bid for the site, and then the different ones that have been managed by different people, they rebid it and say, okay, we'll do this again. So welcome COVID, or not welcome COVID, but hello COVID. And as you know, through every sector in the country, labor shortages are here. And we're seeing a little bit more, or a lot more of it here on the island, with as our costs, which are already high to begin with, for the lesser skilled workers, you know, housing and all that stuff. Then we have the fuel, etc. So we did not get any bids back on Kealakekee. Well, put it this way, on Waimea and on, get this straight, Kealakekee, Hilo, and we got bids back to Hilo, and what's the other one? I'm all lost. Someone was talking about this last week. So Hilo and Kealakekee we did, and Volcano we did not get bids back on. Because, and then Waimea we did not either. But normally the transfer stations that are really close, like in by Kealakekee, Waimea, and Hilo, those have traditionally been $0 bids. It's a contract and there's responsibilities, but we do not pay the vendors to be there. There was enough money in commodities, in recycling, for them to make money. And DOH, to make the best use of the funds that they have, if there was another private recycler, another CRC, Certified Redemption Center close by, they would not want to be paying for the sites. The other sites like Volcano and the more remote ones, we pay the vendors every month to be there, to show up. You know, so there was some things flying around that at Volcano, there was a lease on it and we had a revenue stream from it. It was like, no, there's a lease and the money goes the other way. We paid through the state, we paid them to be there. Because Volcano is so remote, that we spoke with the vendor and they're like, we can't do it. We were lucky to be able to renegotiate. Their main thing about Volcano was they have other sites around the island that are all open on Saturdays, and Saturday was a clincher. They could not find, they can't hire a person just to work 1 day a week. And then this person, they also pay a travel fee. So it just wasn't worth it for them. So we were able to just do an extension on this contract now and hopefully rebid it so there will be a change. So Volcano will be open now on Thursdays, starting next month on the 7th, I think. Waimea, there is a CRC maybe 2 miles away from the transfer station. It's not as convenient, absolutely, I agree. However, there's just, they could not staff it. And then same thing for Kalakahe. Right before you drive into the transfer station on the right-hand side, that's where Atlas Recycling, in the past, they've had it open as well. Now it's, once the CRC closes at Kalakahe, just before you get to the transfer station, just make a right and there's a redemption center there. And then Hilo is Mr. K's, and then I think it's Atlas also. So yeah, it's a struggle. The main thing boils down to labor shortages, and then the inflation that we're seeing. It's just, it's all across the board. So I hope that explained. And they did a pretty good job. So
At those transfer stations that are not going to have redemption, is that space you can use? Something good out of it? You're muted.
hopefully, yes, we would love to see an expansion of the Ryu Center that at Waimea. Also, the challenge with Waimea is that a lot of people, they just drop off their high fives. They don't want the money, they just don't want to throw it out, which is great. The concern at Waimea especially is it's going to get dropped off. And what's going to happen to that? So we're trying to work with the vendor. I'm having to work with, anyway, I have a meeting set up later on. I would love just to say, this is waste diversion space. So it'll remain waste diversion space. So Kealakekee is a little bit different. We might end up using that as an annex also to the Ryu Center. So, and then Hilo, that one is a little bit more, because I don't know if it's going to turn around. You know, eventually, I'm always forever optimistic to be in this job, but that things turn around and then we eventually have CRCs back at the transfer stations again, because that truly is the most convenient and, you know, less fuel driving around to different locations. So, but the tent at the Hilo, if I can move that over to create more space, more covered space at the Hilo Reuse Center, that would be ideal as well. So, but yes, I'm working on
a really good deal. One of the problems, I mean, I go to Waimea and thinking about the safety issues we've talked about for driving through and around on certain of the transfer stations. Some of those CRC places are incredibly crowded and scare me the few times I've ever gone to them. I just think it's something you've got to be aware of, whether they really can cope with the volume that they're going to pick up, assuming people even bother to recycle anymore.
Yeah, I think that we're trying to reach out to, we have a program, but it's going through the process of reaching out to several nonprofits or putting out basically an RFP to nonprofits. Like, do you want to come and collect this? So, because again, a lot of people, they don't, you know, they don't want to go stand in line for 3 hours to get $5 or whatever. They just want to not put it in the bin to be to landfill. So So we are definitely looking at other options. So
Good.
thanks.
Since we've got you talking, are there other solid waste issues in the recycle arena you'd want to inform us about?
The life cycle assessment is, we're rolling along gathering because there's been some changes in our programs with different vendors. We're kind of reworking a few of the data. And at this time, we think it should be done and wrapped up by September. Remember, there's like a 6-month delay on between when George left and then just all the delays and stuff, and then me coming on. So that's moving along. The e-waste, as I described, we're changing that. It'll still pretty much be a collection day. The one change that we're hoping to incorporate into the program is that, let's say we set up a collection day in Hilo, and most likely be at Mr. K's, since that's the vendor and that's where they are. A hope would be in Kona, what we'd like to see is to offer a collection once a month or once every other month, where businesses can come and have a place to drop it off for a fee, their e-waste. Because right now, Mr. K's does go around the island and pick up. I don't know how much they're doing that again. You know, it's better for the climate just to have one event where people can go and not have to send trucks driving all around picking it up. So we've had a lot of requests for a business commercial pickup or a commercial outlet for businesses to bring to dispose of their e-waste. So that's the one change in that. But now we just finished the RFI process. Now we're starting to be developing the RFP to go out. So that will be a good change, hoping that'll work. Nothing really going on with the drop-off recycling. The reuse centers, I talked about those with respect to the CRCs. Green waste, still the same. They're doing a little bit more of, or they're going to be doing some PR based on how mulch is really great for water conservation for all your Westies over there. Just like mulch or stuff, it helps on the water, in water conservation. Scrap, nothing exciting about scrap or tires or propane tanks. Household hazardous waste, that'll be coming back up as per normal. I say normal. In August for Kona and Hilo. So, and I think that that's all. Yep.
Okay. Ramsey, are there landfill issues to update?
There's no, we don't have any landfill issues as we speak. We still negotiating the contract with Waste Management Hawaii, and we got one more meeting coming up the end of this month. Otherwise, it's one landfill. So, but as far as transfer stations, Glenwood transfer station just recently was shut down over the last weekend. We got one of the tree falling on the structure and it did a major damage. So we are working with DLNR on recouping the cost, because ironically, Murphy's Law, the tree was supposed to be pruned by them, and they couldn't get to it, so they were going to hire a private party to come and do it. The next day, the tree falls and damages the structure. It's Murphy's Law, it's just not the right moment, I guess. But yeah, as far as that transfer station, everything, our guys doing a great job keeping the services. Hopefully we'll continue. As far as the solid waste division chief, that position still vacant. We have a great number of candidates that we're going to do interviews the end of next week. So hopefully we'll be successful in interviewing and selecting the right candidate for the job.
Well, certainly wish you luck there.
Yeah. But solid waste is good. You know, like I say, the staff doing a great job. As far as the wastewater, let me get into the wastewater because I have a cabinet meeting in 20 minutes.
Yeah, go for it.
So the wastewater projects update, Hilo project is moving forward on the design aspect of the project. So we supposed to get the project out on the street for bidding the end of mid-January 2023. So our goal is to start construction by June of 2023 to rehab to do the new headworks and the digesters. So phase 2, we signed the contract. We're in the process of finalizing the contract with the consultant as amendment to the phase 1, so they could start doing the design and rehab on the secondary treatment plan and primary clarifiers. So that's moving forward. As far as Hilo, definitely Kalakaua, we had signed a contract with RM Towel to look at the headworks and the odor control project, and also the installation of the sand filter, try to help us through the process and treatment for that as well. So that's moving forward. As far as Pahala Na'alehu, we are finalizing the AOC renegotiation. We have, from our side, we executed the revised AOC, so which is a great accomplishment to the county. We came in with definitely different perspective, different cost was very prohibitive, as you all know, for these two communities. So I'm glad to partner with EPA. They came along after they seen the site, they understood where we were coming from. So we renegotiated the AOC for exactly what the community needed. We had a community meeting back then, and community member addressed their concerns, and we delivered on the concerns. So that's a kudos to everybody who was involved in the process. So now we got new deadlines that we need to start working toward, try to achieve and accomplish. So we build our credibility as we move forward. It's definitely, I look forward to it. That's gonna move as far as the speed light, you know, we need to get it going and start the design process and the layout and what have you. So that's good for both communities. As far as other waste treatment
I
plans,
just want to put in here, thank you very much for the effort you've put in and your willingness to take on that challenge. I'm very impressed, Ramsey. Thank you.
thank you, Georgina. Yeah, it wasn't easy. A lot of people told us, you know, it's a lost cause, but I think it was a cause worth taking. And you know, it's accomplishment, definitely. We went from possible stipulated fine to now we have a revised AOC with the revised projections and deadlines and treatment process. So which is good. I think it's win-win for the entire county. And we don't want to forget the potential major, you know, tens of millions of dollars of cost saving to the taxpayers. I think that's by itself speaks volume. We also have finished one of the innovative projects. Let me see if I could share a quick PowerPoint presentation with you guys. Let's see. Just to show you what our guys been doing. This this project is, you guys know, when we first started, mid-year when we first started, Kapua Stream Bridge, the sewer line was a ductile iron pipe, was suspended 400 feet along the bridge. And it was leaking right into the stream below it, about 230 feet below it. So the idea is, you know, how are we going to stop the leak and the spill? This line was in probably 30, 40 years old. You could see the buildup, the scum buildup inside the pipe. Over the years was never maintained, never cleaned. So it was a challenge, you know, and it was suspended. It's hard to get to, it's hard to stop the leak. And so we took on this project, and definitely outside, this is the community that it serves. This line was a gravity sewer line along the bridge. Along this line was gravity. So we were able to, you know, here's the old manhole. It has a force main, it comes to this, and then from this manhole goes gravity flow along the bridge itself. And you could see, you know, we have to come in and do a pipe pass along the bridge so we could be able to stop the flow from going to that gravity line. And we attempted, our staff attempted to clean the line, because the whole idea concept is definitely was very costly. We don't have a ductile iron pipe on the island, so that was a challenge. And to get it from the mainland during the COVID was going to take about approximately, we were told, you know, at least a year just to get it delivered and ordered and what have you. And you have to build scaffold to get into the bridge to be able to take the old pipe. So we were very creative. We went inside this sewer line, we cleaned it up, and the whole idea is, you know, convert this gravity line to a force main, replace that DI with, the whole idea is instructed staff to figure out, okay, what other material do we have on the island? So we didn't have BBC, we didn't have DI. The only thing we were able to find is HDBE, which is good enough to use and insert it into this line. So we were debating about, you know, we've done the calculation. We were debating between 6-inch insertion versus 8-inch, and our consultant assisted with that calculation. We came with an 8-inch HDBE pipe, fusion welded. And the idea is, let's insert it into that DI. The DI become the encasement, and the line will go to service, and no, without any delays, because we have the material on the island. So I'll just go through some of the pictures. You know, so we deployed the pipe pass with the same product with this HDBE. You can see it through that BVC pipe. And the BVC pipe comes in joints, so 20-foot joints. So it was very difficult even to use that in the insertion process. So the idea was, okay, you could see how the line was clogged. I mean, so what we did, on this picture, you can see the root cutter. So our staff, very creative. They were instructed to put it together. So they put a root cutter into the device that we inserted into the DI that pretty much gave us this end product. This is the actual DI after the cleaning. You could tell from this picture versus that picture how much scum did we remove out of it. It's amazing. It took an effort, but it was challenging. These type of projects take creativity, outside the box thinking. A lot of people doubted the project, but ended up being a success. This is looking from the top to the stream, and it's about 230 feet deep. So here's what we end up doing. We end up doing a fusion weld HDPE line, 8-inch, 400 feet long. And you guys imagine along that bridge, we don't have the land, we do, because it just slopes down to the stream. So the challenge is how are we going to insert this 400 feet segment into a fixed suspended sewer line without doing any structural damages. And we have to have it on the right angle. We have to make sure that the insertion doesn't create any structural stability. So as you see, this is the line, and here's where we start inserting that 8-inch into our old DI. So we could convert it to a forced mains under pressure instead of gravity. And here's the end product. We end up putting the right valves, the right connection to the sewer line. You can see from this picture, this is the line we had to deal with. Look at the holes in this old DI. It was impossible for us to continue with it. It was leaking everywhere. Our guys tried to stop the leak. They kind of sealed it in this side, but definitely it was a challenge. This is the end product. You can see, so as we were wrapping, part of the design is also we wrapped the old DI to give it a longer lifespan to exposure to weathering and the element. So become a great encasement to our HDPE, a new sewer line system. This is the end product. This is, we wrapped it up. It looks really good. And it's functioning now the way it's designed for. It's a creative thinking. Hopefully, you don't see too many projects like this where you could have the option to convert gravity to pressure under 400-foot suspended in the air sewer line.
It looks
So-
like one of those projects they should have on Amazing Engineering Projects. YouTube.
Actually, we thought about it. We're gonna write a technical paper on it and hopefully publish it in the public works magazines, and because it's very creative outside, and it cost us less than $1 million to construct.
Wow.
It was challenging, but it was, hopefully now we get 100 years plus from it, because it's very well sealed pressure sewer line and encased and protected from the elements for years to come. So I thought I could share this accomplishment with you guys. That's one of the challenges that my department took on when we first started, and now we start delivering on it. And it's amazing project.
Nice work.
Very nice. Any other parting words you want to give us?
No, I look forward to all of your comments on the code changes. I do appreciate every one of you being involved in the process. Definitely, our business is not an easy business. We do have a lot of challenges, but I got faith in making a lot of different changes. We have done so far between the AOC, the project I've shown you, and other projects on the asset management, from wastewater to trying to also include asset management for the solid waste facility. It's amazing. LAE Drive, we were able to do the CIPB for the length of the pipe. Staff completed that just, I think was Monday, the last day they finished it. So hopefully we could see a reduction on the chloride amount that go into that sewer line. It's ironically that I was going for my walk because I live in the neighborhood. So, and it was high tide. I shared a video with Peter. Peter, could you be able to share the video with the commissioner? I think it's kind of neat. You guys need to see really where the water is coming from. A lot of people thought, you know, this was one of the first projects I think I got hit on when I first started the X infiltration versus I&I coming from the oceanites. You know, it's amazing. You can see some of the water coming out of the storm drain pipe into the bay during the high tide. So I was there, witnessed it, took a video, and I thought I'll share it with you guys. But if Peter cannot find it now, maybe next meeting I'll share it with you guys. But definitely you could tell, well, the reason you have some of that high coliform numbers, it's really not from sewer, it's coming from the surrounding area. If it's animal feces that get washed to the bay, and I see it. I took a video of it because when the high tide go over the seawalls, end up washing everything down with it to the water, and you could see it. It's amazing, and you got cracks in the seawall that allows the same water to return back, carrying these type of contaminant with it. So, Peter, have you able to get that video? If not, we'll just share it next
Yes, he'll
time.
put the link in the minutes.
Yeah, but it's kind of unique. It kind of gives you an idea how we get the contaminant on that page, on the bay. You know, there's a lot of activities there, and when that water washes the parking lot and the sidewalk back into the water, it's definitely does not look good. But you know, Mother Nature takes care of itself. The next day I went walking there, everybody's swimming, the water looks good. Everything got washed, you know, either deep in the ocean or it got, somehow it's gone. So, but that's all I have for you guys.
All right, are there any burning questions people have for Ramsey? He's going to be late for his cabinet meeting. Seeing none, thank you very much, Director. You're doing a fabulous job, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, future agenda items. You'll see if you've got ideas, send them to me. I will clean up the two reports that we discussed under unfinished business, the information priorities and components for the integrated wastewater plan, and just send them off to DEM, not as official recommendations, but as comments for consideration from EMC. So I don't think we need a motion, nor can we make one at this point. But again, if there, and I'll see if we can set up something on discussing about the whole cesspool conversion activities and status, and maybe even get somebody from DOH to participate in that. So I think we're ready, unless somebody else, for the few that are left here, has a question, to get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Secondly, okay, all three of us in favor. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, guys. Good meeting.